Okay, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm Dr. Lina Malagón, one of the researchers of the project we are discussing today, along with Professor Fionnuala Ní Oláin, Professor Rory Connell, and Professor Bill Ralston. Just a reminder that we are recording this session and it will be made available on YouTube after the event, and also we will produce some short edited clips from it. Then let me share my screen to share with you some of them. Oops. Great. Yes, great. This presentation is based on projects at Queen's University Belfast and Ulster University, supported by the Global Challenge Research Hub on Gender, Justice and Security. The hub has 5 research teams and more than 40 projects worldwide, focusing on Afghanistan, Colombia, Iraq, Lebanon, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, and Uganda, and of course, Northern Ireland. These projects we are talking about today are part of the Transformation and Empowerment research team. You can read more about that in our web site. Let me briefly explain about our projects. These projects, the first one is the Socioeconomic Rights and Transition project. This project is to map how socioeconomic rights are bargained in and out of peace agreements and what form those bargains take. This project also seeks to identify the modalities that lead to the exclusion of social and economic rights. And the overall goal is to better understand the universe of claim making in conflict transformation, as well as to zone in on claims that become strengths in law and practice. The other project is the Colonialism and Transition project. This project studies how the colonial past shaped conditions conducive to contemporary conflict and how shall engaging this past shape contemporary conflict ending solutions. In particular, the project seeks to understand how colonial past shape injustice and how contemporary responses to transition can or should take the harms of colonialism into account when shaping our understanding of remedy, accountability, and reparation in the present. We are particularly interested in the relationship between colonial harms and patterns of gender injustice that are deeply rooted in post-colonial societies. Today, we will discuss how these projects and challenges relate to the field of transitional justice. Then briefly, let me say that transitional justice addresses how societies deal with a past of conflict or oppression, whether this be the Northern Irish Troubles or the Colombian armed conflict, for example. For the United Nations, transitional justice is the full range of processes and mechanisms associated with the society's attempt to come to terms with a legacy of large-scale past abuses in order to ensure accountability, serve justice, and achieve reconciliation. Then our questions today are related to structural injustices, and we will try three aspects of these topics. The question here is: does transitional justice overlook the elephants in the room? Can it speak to major structural and historical wrongs like patriarchy, colonialism, neoliberalism? Should transitional justice be revised or retired? Having into account that transitional justice seeks to establish liberal democratic orders, marginalizing other wider notion of democracy, which put stronger emphasis on democratic control of the economy and or social inequality. Taking for granted the liberal separation of the political institutions and socio-economic spheres, transitional justice as a field is slightly reduced to the former. This means that scholarship turns a blind eye on the political economy of transitional justice processes. Colonialism and lack of equality, for women as root causes of the conflict. And of course, on other major structural injustices, as racism, for example, that we are not addressing today. However, let me say some particular elements of each of these topics. On colonialism, the majority of states to which transitional justice mechanisms are applied are former colonies. But colonial occupation, decolonization, and the ongoing legacy of colonialism frequently go unremarked in transitional justice debates and policymaking. Despite the lack of formal attention to colonialism, battles persist over the legitimacy of colonial borders, the validity of enduring legal instruments of colonial control and memory wars, including the writing and telling of story during and after the colonial period. Debates about colonialism rarely shape the construction of remedies in the present, and in many societies, including Northern Ireland, the history of colonialism might be seen as irrelevant or marginal to contemporary challenges. In Colombia, that is our comparative site of analysis, there is substantial challenge to the relevance of colonial discourses, and even to the terminology that ought to be used to describe the past and its influence on the present. We are also profoundly interested in understanding if it's possible to make comparisons across colonial experience, what the ethical and methodological limits of that endeavor might be. In terms of neoliberalism, understood as an economic model pushing regulation on economies and around the world for forcing open national markets to trade and capital, and for demanding that governments shrink themselves by austerity or privatization. Neoliberal practices deepen inequality and discrimination, in particular in deeply divided societies. And conflict often has deep roots in different forms of social and economic injustice, including structural violence, discrimination, and inequality. Then transitional justice and peace provisions in peace agreements requires these root causes to be addressed. Finally, with our third topic today, patriarchy, the essential existence and consequences of patriarchy as defining element of repression, governance, and regulation in most societies, including conflicted society, is underestimated. Naming patriarchy as a structural impediment to ending conflict is an important prerequisite to addressing the practical manifestation of patriarchy. The structure of peacemaking is itself a patriarchal construct, which partially explains the resistance to procedural changes to include women, as well as the lack of influence on peace outcomes, even when women are included.